This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Year because it's where all of the best and most intelligent analysts fill out their brackets only to have their grandma who hasn't watched an ounce of college basketball this year to have a better bracket than them. What's going on? March Madness is here. Stormy, Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you live in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Money Moves holding it down for the next 2 hours. You were on the air yesterday as the field of 68 was officially announced, catching all of those live lines when they came down.
And yet I'm back here again. Busy
bee.
Yes, indeed. In fact, I have to pull up my notebook here so we can talk about the openers and where they have been and whatnot. But it was fun to watch it, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit. A somewhat drama-free day, and it's always cool to see the books and the differences in the numbers and where you open and what some other shops open, and eventually meeting in the middle, the totals as well, though they don't get hit as hard early on, or at least while we were on the air. So getting a first glimpse at it, getting some early numbers. I got 3 yesterday that moved in my favor, so that's pretty solid. So we'll see if that actually matters. But yeah, I love Selection Sunday shows. I think this was the 3rd straight year Tim and I have done it.
That's actually what I was going to ask you, is how many things that you ultimately ended up firing on in show, and you got to 3.
Yeah, 3. So last year, Tim was kind of making fun of me because last year I had like 6 or 7, I think. I had a few, but last year yesterday, 3 really stuck out to me, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that was about it. A lot of them still are kind of in the range of where they open, so we haven't seen a ton of movement yet. And the theme, of course, as we have seen 1,000 times over, I don't know if you've seen some of the notes about this, but it does seem that we are starting to see the effects of the NIL on the field itself in college basketball. We have some of our biggest favorites for some of the seed dynamics we've seen in a really long time. The 1 seeds are the biggest favorites we've seen in a really long time. So maybe that holds in terms of the actual outright results. We will see. But does seem like, as we talked about leading into Selection Sunday and to today, this was going to be a top-heavy tournament, and nothing you saw, at least from the opening lines and some of the power rating projections, would lead you to believe otherwise.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we'll have plenty of time, obviously, to preview the games that are coming up on Thursday and Friday, but we will have those first 4 in games from Dayton, Ohio, beginning tomorrow already. So we're going to be hot and heavy with this stuff. Let's set the table for everything that we have to come today on the program. Here's the rundown.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is the rundown.
All right, a couple great guests to help us unpack everything with the field of 68 announced yesterday on Selection Sunday. Professional bettor Chris Macero is going to join us here this hour. And then coming up later on in hour 2, Dan Schulman, lead college basketball ESPN play-by-play man. Dan Schulman is going to join the program. He called all of the Big 12 tournament, the SEC title game. He's also the voice of the Toronto Blue Jays, so maybe we can sneak in a baseball question.
I will. I'd be totally down with that. But looking forward to both of them, the bettor and, of course, the media member, to see some different perspectives on what we're going to see this weekend. Macero specifically, I would assume, I haven't talked to him, but I would assume Macero's got already a couple of slips in the pocket, see what he thinks about a few of these teams as well, and to get some storylines and some of the things we could talk about, including with Dan. Maybe he's got some thoughts on the development, of course, with Alabama, and the fact that one of their second leading scorers is now facing some pretty hefty charges out there in Alabama.
And that first matchup as well with Hofstra, I know a trendy underdog as well that people are interested in, maybe that much more so now with that news, which we'll get to in a moment. You already mentioned that we have a lot of lines that are on the move from those openers. So we're going to have fun today with a little do you approve this move, cruising through as many of those games that we have seen movement on to see if we think that's the right side.
Yep. As we talked about, a few that I'm involved with have moved already. A couple of the others have moved. Looking to maybe play against 1 or 2 of them. Not as many totals have moved, as we've kind of seen. A point here or there. There's only been 2 games in which there's been movement of more than 2 points, and we'll discuss those. So look, we probably shouldn't see too much movement. We talk about this in the sense of the NFL, now here in college basketball. We have seen all these teams. We have over 30 data points on these teams at this point right now. The market should be relatively tight, so it's interesting to see where we're at with some of these. Not all of them are going to be as tight as like an NFL because there's so much data out there about them, but at least in this sense, we shouldn't see a ton of line moves, and I think we have seen it, and the ones we have, they are somewhat minimal.
And, of course, as expected on a day like today, we're going to have a full bracket breakdown. And I haven't fully confirmed and cemented what my bracket will be today. I do have a strong opinion on that, that we'll get to a little bit later on. And call me crazy, but like we always do on an Overreaction Monday. But kind of looking through the field, who we think has the more reasonable paths, upset bids we think could be coming up. We'll have all of that conversation. And reminder, at the end of the day today, our March Madness betting guide will officially be out as well. So you're going to see whether it's from a bracket standpoint, best bets, what are you making that face for?
No, go, continue. I'll tell you afterwards.
Oh, man, that was throwing me off so bad. I was like, am I wrong? Is that not going to be in the betting guide?
It's work related. It was something on my end. Yeah,
every single show host here at the network will have their final 4 in the guide. best bets that have already been made, some of which are not just first round games, right? But looking ahead to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, those different types of odds. I know a lot of people are more into the rollover parlay potential, but also bets that are just to be made. And if I remember correctly, we're also going to have some NCAA tournament survivor strategy that's in there.
Yes, we are. And that's actually, I am looking through some of the things that are already posted on the back end, and I made a mistake on my end when I was doing something. But the guy's going to be great. All the insight's going to be fantastic. And you and I have a deadline to meet in 55 minutes.
Yes, we do. And I finished writing up my blurbs. I just have to copy and paste them into the document
Same
now.
with me.
So I'm farther along than you.
That's not true. You have no idea where I'm at.
I have a feeling, considering I'm the one that told you that we have the deadline when we were walking in this morning. So neither here nor there. But what you said at the top, that there wasn't a lot of drama when it came to the bubble teams. And for anybody who saw some of the bracketology stuff, and Joe Lenardi was about as perfect as you can get in what his ultimate predictions were. The last four in today, or yesterday rather, NC State, Texas, SMU. Miami of Ohio does ultimately get in. Auburn held out.
Yeah, so let's start with Miami, Ohio. I think this is such a good example, and Tim and I hit on this yesterday as part of the show. This is such a good example of value in a number that wasn't going to get there. So right before Selection Sunday, Miami, Ohio was minus 2,500 to make it into the NCAA tournament. Minus 2,500. They were the last team in. So from the sense of, I guess, probability, it was one of those where it's like, man, I don't think they're that big of a lock. I don't think the committee is this locked into what Miami, Ohio is. Well, maybe there's value at 11-1 to take them because there is not this high of a probability. They were still in. Ultimately, it's still a loss, but they were much closer to the edge than I think a lot of people, including myself, were. I thought they were going to be somewhat safely in, like one of the last four buys, maybe even the first last four in. But the fact that they were the last team in and they were priced as such, that was pretty surprising. But they make it in, and that's all that matters, I guess.
I did also just at least want to clarify, because we heard from Keith Gill, the chair of the NCAA Division I basketball committee, on the thing, and he said while Miami of Ohio was the 44th overall seed, the lowest of all of the at-large teams, they were not the last team selected into the field. They were still before NC State, Texas, and SMU, for whatever that is worth.
Well, it's weird because some of the places they put them last on the list of last four in.
On the chair, as the chair at least, after they did the rankings reveal on CBS.
Interesting.
Did say that. We also learned
NC State was a surprise too, by the way.
Yes.
We should note that NC State, I think, did not. I don't think a lot of people expected them to be that far down in terms of an at-large bid.
Yeah. VCU also, shout out our guy Dave Ross, a proud VCU alum. If they didn't win Sunday to earn the A10, we did learn through that conversation as well, they would have been out of the field. They're actually a team I like in the first round. So we'll get to that in a moment. But I know you wanted to hear from Bruce Pearl. So talk me through this kind of perspective and everything on Auburn.
I just thought this was funny. I mean, look, everything is right with the world. I said it yesterday. If there is a God, Auburn won't make it in, and Auburn did not make it in. That you have to, at least at some point, pay for your record. And you can sit there and say, we tried, but that doesn't matter. At some point, you have to succeed when you're talking about building a resume for the NCAA tournament. Here was Pearl afterward when he found out and talking about Auburn and what they did and maybe who they should be ahead of.
That turned out to be a better game than what people thought it was going to be because Ole Miss did so well in the SEC tournament. Auburn beat three champions this year. They beat Florida, they beat St. John's, and they beat Arkansas. They played the toughest schedule in the country. Don't know they were rewarded for it. It's hard to get another couple of SEC teams in when the SEC already has 10.
Yes, that's the reason why. It's because the SEC already has 10. They were not rewarded for their schedule, as he put it there. He went on to say that maybe they should have been ahead of SMU. You have to get the wins at some point. You can't just say, hey, we have the hardest schedule, and even though we did not compete against it, we did not get the results we deserve to be in. That's stupid, because then everybody's just going to put together the hardest schedule and then be one game above 500 and then just say, yep, we're fine. We're in. We're good. It was ridiculous. So I'm glad they did not make it in. I think everybody was.
You still won 17-16. And by the way, you had all the opportunity in the world to put away Tennessee, and you give up a 20-point lead in that one that could have furthered your resume a little bit, and you didn't get it. That said, so what are some of the early games, at least, that we already have for the first round set up that caught your attention and that you either fired on or contemplated and might get there eventually?
So there's a lot. Let's start with High Point in Wisconsin. Okay. We're going to talk more about this as part of our Do You Approve This move? This is one of the big moves of the day. When we talked about yesterday, it opened 12.5 when Tim and I were on the air. This is now 9.5. Mm-hmm. It's one of the games that I have that we had discussed, but this is an interesting game for many reasons. First, there is the line move, obviously. Second, there is Wisconsin, a team that I think I believe in to an extent. They're one of my long shot bets at 125-1. Wisconsin is one of those teams that also falls in that category in terms of where they rank in offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency, being top 35 in defense, kind of fitting into that mix depending on how you want to slice it as a true national title contender. But they're also very volatile. We saw that in the Illinois game in the Big Ten championship tournament, in the Big Ten tournament. Stormy, they were down. They didn't cover that first half line, if you remember, when you and I were together. They come storming back. They eventually win the game in overtime against Illinois. The volatility of this Badgers team is insane. I think they could lose this game against High Point. I think they could make their way to an Elite Eight. Like, there is so many different variables for Wisconsin, and the fact that the market is pushed against them, High Point being one of the trendy dogs early, I'm fascinated by this game. This has to be near the top of the list.
Honestly, that's exactly what I was going to say, is I could see them getting knocked out right away, like be one and done, or going pretty deep in this thing, because on a game-by-game basis, I feel like they can beat anyone and they can lose to anyone because of all the reasons that you just referenced. And High Point specifically, a high-octane, like high-scoring team, average 90 points per game. We'll see what that looks like in that first matchup. And we know in the 5-12, those fives are always so vulnerable. There's always one or a couple of them that go down in the tournament.
Yeah, we'll see if that actually ends up. And this should be a fun game, too. High Point, and we'll get to more of these, but High Point's going to be willing to run. They're a top 50 team in terms of tempo. Like you mentioned, they're a top 65 team in terms of offensive efficiency. They don't turn the ball over. They will shoot threes. This should be, on paper, a fun back and forth game between the two. Generally, just bring upsets, as we've talked about a ton. You want slower tempo. High Point won't do that, but they should still be more than willing to come in and run. And by the way, they now have the nation's active winning streak, the longest one at 14 going into the NCAA tournament.
No surprise, we're going to be heavy on the college hoops today. So when we come back, we'll hit some more of those games that are of interest to us, potential paths, which one seed has it the best looking ahead, and a whole lot more. We're just getting started here on Money Moves. Keep it locked right here, VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We'll be right back.
So you're listening to this podcast because you want an edge. But what if I told you you're only halfway there? You've got the mindset. Now it's time to get the toolkit to match. Here's the thing. Pro bettors spend thousands on data and tools. But what they don't want you to know is that you can get the same edge for a fraction of the cost with VSiN Pro. VSiN Pro gives you access to expert picks, public betting data, prop projections, powerful tools, analytics, and more. Just tap the link in the description and see why thousands of bettors are already using VSiN Pro to cash more bets.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Back here on Money Moves, this segment of the program is sponsored by Upside. Download the free Upside app today and earn real cash back every time you fill up your gas tank. Plus, when you use the promo code SPORTS, you get 25 cents back per gallon on your first tank as well. Stormy, Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you live in downtown Las Vegas Circa Resort and Casino. And while it is a heavy college basketball day, naturally coming off of Selection Sunday yesterday, it was actually a pretty busy Sunday in terms of the sports world overall. We had, like, right up to the wire, Cameron Young winning the Players' Championship on that final 18th hole as Selection Sunday was about to kick off. And then later on in the evening, Team USA, after all of the concern about whether or not they'd even make the quarterfinals, now find themselves in the WBC championship game after a win over the Dominican Republic yesterday, which was a very challenging win ultimately to secure 2-1.
Yeah, look, I will say that I don't, on a Selection Sunday, don't really care too much about what's going on there, but the one that sticks out of the two events that you're talking about, the choke job of Ludwig Aberg again, as you look at the Players' Championship, and we see these choke jobs down the stretch. Aberg on back-to-back holes finds water on 11 and 12. A three-stroke lead turns into a three-stroke deficit, and then all of a sudden, that's how you look at it. And then how about Matt Fitzpatrick on 18 on his second shot, I believe it was, finds a rough, and he can't recover from it, ends up bogeying on 18 to give it to Cameron Young. It looked like maybe we were going to get a playoff, and instead, Cam Young gets it done with a round 468. So a incredible final few holes as everybody was really getting amped up for Selection Sunday. Drama on the golf course for sure.
Yeah, especially with, you mentioned everything with Ludwig, who, I mean, rough go if you had him in some of the outrights or anything like that. Obviously, your top 10s and the other props get there, but a tough scenario, top 20s, but tough scenario if you were somebody that had him to win it all and were feeling good that finally he was trending in that direction. Meanwhile, for Cameron Young, he's trailing by a stroke on 17, goes birdie, and then because of exactly what you said, the Fitzpatrick fumble on 18, all he needed was a par. That ultimately gets him the win standalone there. As for Team USA, they will await the winner of Venezuela and Italy in the World Baseball Classic today. Venezuela, a minus 190 money line favorite. Italy, plus 155. Run total in that game, 10. I don't have anything for that one tonight, but just excited to cheer on America for whoever ultimately it might be, no?
Don't you do it every day? Cheer on
Every
America.
day. So patriotic.
That's right.
Let's get back to the college hoops, though, and some of our early bracket takeaways. In the last segment, the only game that we really discussed individually that kind of stood out from that first round was High Point, Wisconsin. Where else should we be looking, in your opinion?
Well, what about you? I mean, I said a game. I think there's, what's that?
I just said I have a few.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, give me one, because I think High Point, Wisconsin, I guess I'll steal one more and say TCU, Ohio State's going to be pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the big moves, too. It was one of those two where I was waiting for the line to become widely available. It opened TCU plus 4.5, and I was like, ooh, I will take a piece of that. And then sure enough, it gets down to 2.5 in favor of Ohio State. You know how I feel about this TCU team. We talked about them a couple of times. They head into the NCAA tournament playing some pretty good basketball, stuck around with Kansas, and ultimately what was a loss. It was a long shot play for me in the Big 12 tournament. But if you look at what TCU can do defensively, I think this is a matchup that can work potentially in their favor. One of the things that I think would maybe turn you off potentially against Ohio State is the fact that, yes, they are one of the hotter teams when you look at the results down the stretch. Wins over Purdue, Penn State, whatever, Indiana, beating Iowa in the Big Ten tournament, and then, of course, pushing Michigan, covering that number easily against the Wolverines. But one of the things I think that when I've watched them, they can be a little reliant on Bruce Thornton, especially in some of those half-court situations in crunch time. That might kill you here in a game that looks like it is destined for crunch time. TCU, great at forcing turnovers, great at doing that without getting opponents to the free throw line. They have been absolutely fantastic. And, of course, over those last 10 games, as we have discussed as well, one of the best defenses in the country. So I was kind of hoping that maybe that it would stay in that 4.5 range, but obviously did not. But still one of the more fascinating games there, and we'll call that the upset that you could look at. It's a 2.5-point game, so it's still an upset technically. But TCU against Ohio State is at the top of my list. It's pretty interesting.
Well, one that we teased in the last segment that I know you got a good number on was Hofstra and Alabama. Big news for the Tide this morning. Alabama's second leading scorer, Aiden Holloway, was arrested on a first-degree possession charge of marijuana. Game is Friday in Tampa. Mm-hmm. So how much, just from a mental standpoint, is this something that gives you cause for concern for Alabama's mental state?
I don't know. I mean, because the weird thing is, obviously, we just don't know what's going to happen. We know that he's been arrested. We don't know if he's going to be available or not as you move along. We don't have to get into the details of marijuana still being something that's considered a felony at this point. Sure. It's 2026. But look, you want him out there. And Alabama was already a team that I think you considered somewhat vulnerable in this position. Hofstra is the team that checks the boxes that you want if you look at the way that they play. Again, we're looking for slow tempo. This is the 317th in the team in the country in terms of tempo. You want a high rate of three-point attempts. This team takes over 44% of their attempts from beyond the arc. That was second most in the CAA. So this is a team that will slow it down, will take away possessions from the opponent, and will ratchet up that variance and take a ton of threes. And don't take my word for it. We talked to Jack Golke yesterday on the show. For those who don't remember, the sharpshooter for Oakland who ended up beating Kentucky in the first round. And I asked him just about that. Possessions, slowing them down and taking a lot of threes. Is that what you game plan for when you're trying to spring some of those upsets? And that he said exactly what we're looking for here. So Hofstra fits what you want. Look, it could get ugly. Alabama could just run away with this because they get their tempo, they get going, their offense is great. But you pair all of that with the fact that Alabama defensively has been this wishy-washy team you can't put your finger on. I think that this is one of those that if there was one of these first-round upsets, I think, and we'll talk more about this and call me crazy, but Alabama, Nebraska, you might want to look out for it. But Alabama specifically, since we're talking about it, I played Hofstra. Speaking
to some of those key factors that you're looking for an underdog that you want to buy on, is there a similar conversation to be had for contenders? Are there certain traits of a team that makes you either want to buy in and believe in a team to make a Final Four, win a national championship, or things that keep you off of one?
I mean, generally, a lot of people have been using these benchmarks of there's a lot of different ones. There's where there hasn't been a champion. Let me look up this number exactly. But there's been a lot of parameters of there hasn't been a champion since this. They've not fit these categories.
Whatever the number is in offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency.
And that's generally what you're looking for. And defense is obviously going to be a big one. You want to be able to defend at some point because you can't just sit here and expect a hot offense to carry you all the way through. Case in point, again, we'll talk about Alabama, who has had its lack of success on the roads when you're talking about them in the SEC tournament. They have a lot of problems there. They come in 67th in the country. They were 8th in SEC play in defensive efficiency. Those aren't the teams you want. You want a team with some sort of balance that is going to fall within those categories. Teams like Purdue might fall just outside of that. They're floating around 36 in the country. Arkansas, as we have discussed, one of the best offenses in the country, but 48th in defensive efficiency. Alabama, to reference them once more, that is going to be something that is going to, I think, be very interesting from that perspective and something you're generally looking for.
A couple other games that I know caught my attention as potentially intriguing are a couple of those 9-8 matchups. Iowa Clemson and Utah State Villanova, short 2.5-point spreads in that one. I think for Utah State and Villanova, this is one where the seeds probably should be flipped, in my opinion. I know we've seen a lot more Utah State and Mountain West basketball.
You listened to Draw Calhoun yesterday?
What'd he say? No.
What was the quote? I think abysmal seed or something like that. Atrocious seed for them. Yeah.
I don't know if I would take it that far as like absolutely atrocious, because they did stumble in some pretty significant games down the stretch. But I think you saw them rebuild in a big way in the conference tournament, and for them to not only like run through, but to run through the way they did and pulling away from a team like San Diego State in the conference championship game as well, significant. So I do like Utah State in that matchup. I did a money line play, and obviously this has been bet out now from the 1.5 to the 2.5 point spread. Texas Tech and Akron is a game that I find sneaky intriguing as well. You heard, if you were watching the CBS telecast yesterday for the bracket reveal, Seth Davis say that he has Akron as a Sweet 16 team. They're one of his favorite upset bids here to not only win one game, but like move ahead. I am not so sure. What are you? Well,
look, it's your point. And this is actually, so I had this in my bracket. My second round matchup was Akron versus Hofstra. So,
okay.
So if we're right about Alabama being vulnerable, and if Akron takes on Texas Tech, who doesn't have JT Toppin, obviously, there is a scenario in which Akron is facing Hofstra in the second round, and then maybe you then move on to the next weekend. So I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world. Obviously, I don't want to cut you off for your explanation as to why not, but that is a scenario that obviously could play out, and it is in my bracket for this. So I thought that was fun.
You do have that matchup.
Yeah.
See, I don't want to give too much away because we do have like an entire segment where we'll get into some of our stronger opinions about the bracket. But I think Texas Tech, even after losing JT Toppin to the torn ACL, has enough pieces to beat a team like that, and should. It's still a 5-12 at the end of the day. This is still a team that has a school record for wins over top 5 teams and is still being coached by Grant McCaslin and has a healthy Christian Anderson. So I feel like they should be able to get the job done there and advance, if not farther, depending on, to your point, who that next round matchup ultimately would be. I think Kentucky could be pretty vulnerable here against Santa Clara as well. That's another one that caught my attention. And Georgia St. Louis, I do not know what to make of that game at all.
It's going to be awesome.
It is. I feel like that's going to be a really fun one just from a viewing standpoint.
I think Tim and I hit this really quickly yesterday. It seems like this is an NBA game in that there's some of those NBA games where it's a 1.5 point spread and the total's 240. Mm-hmm. Why would you pre-flop bet a game like that when you understand that there's going to be a ton of volatility in a contest there? There's going to be a lot of back and forth. It's a coin flip spot, truly, almost. And there's a lot of scoring. That means you can maybe find some in-game opportunities and live bet this game. But I do lean toward Georgia here. I do think that is from a side perspective, we're talking pre-flop, bet it, yes or no, it would be Georgia for me.
And ultimately, they are a 2.5 point favorite. That's another one of those 8-9 matchups. Like I said, that's where a lot of the intrigue fell for me, at least at first blush on the bracket. Total 169.5 in that one. And if you are still paying full price for gas, ladies and gentlemen, what are we doing? You don't have to anymore, especially when you have the free Upside app where you can earn real cash back every time you fill up your tank. Download Upside from the App Store or Google Play Store and start earning today. Plus, if you use the promo code SPORTS, that'll get you an extra 25 cents back per gallon your first fill up. It's simple. It's legit. You can cash out anytime directly to your bank account or e-gift cards like Amazon. Download the Upside app now. Promo code SPORTS. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Excited to keep this all rolling. We're going to have professional bettor Chris Macero join the program coming up next. And this might be the first time in the history of history I actually teased him for the right segment. Let's go.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
March tournament knowledge to the test at the highest level. We've got something fun in store for you this month. Splash Sports is offering $1 million in guaranteed contest prizes in a high-stakes Survivor contest. $1,000 to enter, $1 million on the line. It's like NFL Survivor, but for the big dance, just make one pick per day. You can't use the same team twice, which adds to strategy as well. Outlast everyone else, and you're in for your share of $1 million. Plus, right now, new players using promo code VSINMM26 get a 50% deposit match up to $100, a free Quick Picks entry up to $20 on them, plus a 100% Quick Picks payout boost on an entry up to $20 as well. Entries close March 19th. It's coming up. Don't wait. Head to splashsports.com/VSIN. Code VSINMM26. Must be 21 or older. Available in select states only. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you back here on Money Moves, VSIN, the Sports Betting Network, talking all things college hoops with March Madness upon us in earnest. We'll have the first four beginning tomorrow from Dayton, Ohio, and then we'll really get it going. Excited to have Chris Macero join us here on the Progressive Guest Line, professional bettor, also in the Circa College Hoops Challenge. And for somebody who's done this as long as you have, Chris, I am curious your strategy kind of diving into these early games. Do you like to jump on a number right away, see where the market starts to move one way or another? Do you take into account the seed numbers at all with some of the historical upsets? What's your approach when we see things come out?
Well, I will admit I was a little behind the 8-ball today because I was too caught up in the golf tournament. Yesterday I had Bobby Mack at 61 to 1. I had Bear at 51, not 51, 23 to 1, but I had it for a sizable amount. And both of them just, fell off the page pretty quick. So I was dealing with that, and I was getting ready for the World Baseball Classic. So I was a little bit behind on my college basketball. It was probably the first time in my life where I wasn't sitting in front of sitting in my living room, just hammering it out, writing down the names and the teams and getting it all going. But, we can catch up a little quickly here. And I don't put too much into that historical seeding like 5-12 and that stuff. What I do like to look at is definitely the travel, going east to west, west to east, finding a team that was hot, but all of a sudden they're getting shipped off. And, I look at a situation, I don't have too many complaints about the bracket, but a little bit upset like Arkansas is a 4 and Purdue's a 2, basically have the same record. Purdue is a 7 seed in their own tournament. How they're a 2 seed really blows my mind. And then they ship Arkansas all the way out to Oregon. It just stuff like that kind of irks me a little bit. I would have liked to see Oklahoma make the tournament, even though they probably didn't have the metrics and the numbers to make it, but they were obviously playing a lot better than teams like SMU, who've lost 5 of the last 6. NC State have lost 7 of the last 9. I mean, how can you put these teams in? I guess it was a very weak bubble, and that's just where we are. But I definitely look at the travel angles, teams starting at, maybe an earlier tip time. Stuff like that really catches my attention.
All right, well, let's talk about some of these teams that were on the bubble. SMU, one of those squads, and they are a pretty solid favorite against Miami, Ohio. 7.5, the number. While we were on the air, Tim and I, it actually got bet up to as high as 9, Chris, before it made its way back down. What do you make of the Red Hawks' chances here?
Well, I think they have a good chance, and for a couple of reasons. I know B.J. Edwards is supposedly coming back for SMU. The team tweets it out, before the selection committee to let them know he's coming back. He hasn't played since February 25th. He averages 12.7 points a game, 5.9 rebounds, 4.9 assists. But in his last 6 games, he only totaled a total of 49 points. So who knows if he's going to be back, if he even is coming back. Sometimes these schools put that stuff out there just so they can get in the tournament. And I think that loss Miami, Ohio took to UMass in the tournament, I think that's going to help them. I mean, obviously you want to have an undefeated season. They're probably not going to win the national championship. But I think they all took a collective, big exhale. Hey, we lost the game. We're still in the tournament. Now we have a really good offense, and we're going to Dayton, where we're basically going to be, the home team. Who's good? Everyone's going to be rooting for Miami of Ohio. They're playing in their own state. This SMU team, as I mentioned, they've lost 7 of 9. They're not a good team. I didn't think they were going to make the tournament. I'm surprised they did. And on the flip side, you got Miami of Ohio, 6th in effective field goal percentage. They shoot the 2 extremely well, 61.5%, and they shoot the 3 good too, 37.5%. So I think they're a live underdog. I think they're a live shot to win the game. I played it plus 7.5. I played the money line. I think Miami could surprise some people.
Talking early NCAA tournament bets with professional sports bettor Chris Macero here on the Progressive Guest Line. We were just talking last segment about some of those short spread 8-9 games. One of the more interesting ones, I think, Clemson on Iowa going head to head. You have a play on the total, though. What did you like?
Yeah, I mean, this is the consummate rock fight, ugly type of game. I've watched enough of these two teams this year where the games are being played in the 60s, sometimes even in the 50s. You have two of the slowest paced teams in the country, Clemson, 333rd in pace, Iowa, 357th in pace, and they both play good defense. And the metrics have Clemson at 20th best defensive team, Iowa the 30th best defensive team, and neither one of them shoot the three that good. You have two coaches, McCollum and Brownell, kind of overrated on the offensive end. They're just, the teams play good defense, but the offense is very stagnant. They like to walk it up, and both of these teams, they defend deep into the shot clock. Clemson defends at 359th out of 365, Iowa 305. So they're both defending well, deep into the shot clock, and they both bring it up slow. So I know it's a low total. It's only 130, 129.5. I'm playing the under. I'm going to look for a first half total when it pops, just so you don't have to deal with the fouling. But just an eye test type of game. Both of these slow-paced teams, ugly type of game. You just have to. You might not even want to watch it if you're going to bet the under. Just play the under, turn it off, watch a different game, check back at halftime, see what the score is.
I actually really like this one, Chris, that you have. UConn is one of the worst ATS teams in the field right now. The market's been too high on them. Projections have been too high on them. They're laying a big number against Furman.
Well, I know you guys play that game with Greg Peterson. I wanted to play with Stormy. Stormy, do you know Furman's nickname?
The Paladins, baby. Let's go. So fun.
Yes, the Paladins. They are the knight. That's a knight from like medieval times. So great logo. They got the guy with the shield, the knight. It's all, great looking logo. And if you remember, in 2023, the Paladins, Furman, they knocked off the number 4 seed Virginia Cavaliers in the first round of the tournament. So this is old hat for Bob Ritchie, who's in his 9th season there. 203-92, 68.8% winning percentage. This guy's a really good coach. They won the Southern Conference. They won 3 games in a row. They play a good slow. They're a slow pace, muck it up type of team, but they're very effective from 2-point land. And you just cannot lay 21 points with UConn, a team that's been struggling offensively all year long. I know they play elite defense, but I just have a feeling 21 is way too many to lay. Look what they just did Saturday night against St. John's. They only shot 15.8% from 3, only 3 for 19. The game before against Georgetown, a terrible Georgetown team, they struggled, 8 for 25 from 3. So I know UConn is elite defensively, but I'm taking the 21 points for Furman. They had a nice little run, covered a bunch of spreads in the conference tournament. I think 21 is a nice get. I think this will be a slow-paced type of game. I'm going to probably look to play it under first half when it pops, so we don't have to deal with the fouling again, but I already played Furman plus 21.
How about this in the 10-7, UCF and UCLA? You mentioned travel. I can't wait to hear Mick Cronin complain about having to go to Philadelphia for this one. Health, obviously, a big factor here in play for the Bruins. Looking at 5.5 as the current number on a handful of places, total 152.5. How would you play it?
Yeah, I played +6 with UCF, and as you mentioned, the travel is something you have to see. And I laughed out loud. Sometimes they play these games in the pod where even though they're in the East region, they still play it in the West, or they're in the West region, they still play it in the East before they do the Sweet 16. But I laughed out loud when I saw they were in Philadelphia. They went from LA to Chicago, Chicago to LA. Now they're going to go to Philadelphia. Luckily, it's not an early tip time. But yeah, Mick Cronin's going to be upset. You got to deal with the Bilodeau injury. They say he's probable, but who knows? He didn't play against Purdue in the semifinal game. UCF played the gauntlet of the Big 12, finished 9-9 in league. They got some great wins over Kansas, Texas Tech, BYU. I think 6 is too much. I think UCLA will probably get the win. Mick Cronin's one of my favorite coaches, as crazy as he is. I'm kind of friends with his brother. I've met Mick a few times. He comes out to the win for Kentucky Derby every year. He sits behind us, yells and screams. He's a fiery guy, good guy, but he's a great coach. I think they'll get the win, but I think 5.5, 6 is a little too much. I think this is more of a one possession type of game. UCF's a sneaky good team, and I think they should be able to hang around, especially with the tough travel, East Coast, West Coast to East Coast. That's been an angle I've been playing all year in these Big Ten and the ACC teams. When you have these new West Coast teams in the conference, when they come East, they do not seem to do well at all.
Chris, 45 seconds, total sum of the seeds in the Final Four. You can find 9.5 under -130. What do you think?
Well, I would say under. I mean, you just got to avoid. I mean, you got to figure at least 2 of the 1 seeds are going in. I'm concerned about Michigan a little bit. The guard play and the turnovers they're just consistent. For as good a team as they are, when they are on fire, they they can obviously crush anyone, but they're making me worried a little bit. But I still think 2 number ones get in. I like Florida to get there. Duke's looking good, although they are in the blue blood bracket of death. Yeah. 5 of the best coaches in the country in that bracket. But I would still go under. I don't think there's going to be too many long shots making a deep run to the Final Four.
Chris, thanks for making time for us today. We appreciate you.
No problem. Thank you for introducing me correctly this time, Stormy. I appreciate that.
We didn't need you to text JVT and be like, I'm on yet?
Right.
Finally, we got it done. Chris Macero, everybody. Okay, we got some aside here on Money Moves. When we come back, call me crazy, but speaking of that bracket of death, I know JVT's got a strong opinion next.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
In 2011, the Sharp Plays just completed another dominant run, including a 2025 campaign that saw bankrolls double, 15 straight years of winning, and it's all documented, records and logs posted publicly at sharpplays.com for full performance auditing, something that separates the Sharp Plays from most of the betting industry. When the Sharp Plays move, sportsbooks take notice, advanced AI tools, and trusted insider intelligence identifying price value before the numbers shift. Respected and watched. Start winning with them at sharpplays.com.
Put on your tinfoil hats.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. The whole world gone crazy.
For Call Me Crazy, but...
All right, let's get into it on an Overreaction Monday. Stormy, Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you. Heavy NCAA tournament theme here for today's Call Me Crazy But. And so I'm just going to start right off the top here with my thoughts on the bracket. Call me crazy, but you only get to claim one bracket. Nothing bothers me more year after year after year than people coming out of the woodwork saying that they had this exact upset in the first round, or they had this exact Elite Eight setup, or yada, 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 when you built 10 brackets. That doesn't count. You can't reference all of the brackets to say, oh, you had that upset if you had it in one of them.
Sorry.
So you're calling me a hypocrite because...
I just had a cough.
Because I said this morning, like, I built out my gut reaction bracket, but tomorrow I'm going to cement what my true bracket is. And that is the bracket that I will claim, that I will hold on to for dear life and go down with the ship with. I think it's fine to make a couple and figure out what you want to do. You only get to claim one.
You see what this is right here? What am I holding up for our radio audience?
That is your bracket.
That is a bracket that I filled out yesterday. Ask me how many I'm going to fill out.
That is your lone wolf.
Right there. Right there. By the way, what my favorite thing is, because we live in a very crappy society in which we love to just point out everything that people get wrong. One of my favorite things around this time of year, which we've seen a couple of times, is nice pick in your bracket, idiot. You're an idiot too. We all have terrible brackets, you morons. Let's get over it. It's just a bracket. Have some fun, and you stick to your guns. You're a hypocrite. This is my one and only right
what
here.
What I am doing is I do a gut reaction bracket. I do one that's like what I want to see happen, and then I do one that's got a little bit of research, and then we'll pick what I think is best of the three that will be my official bracket that I will claim. And I'll have that decided by tomorrow for the record. We can go through it. Okay, what's first for you?
Mine's already decided. All right.
We get it. You're better than me, and you know it.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Actually, you do your next one because my thing's malfunctioning, and I don't have mine up.
Okay. Well, I teased this a little bit earlier. Yeah. We know that, like, 5-12 upsets are always very popular. We've seen the last, 3 of the last 4 years, multiple 12s upset the 5. At least one in 34 of the 40. Texas Tech is not going to be one of them. Despite the way they ended the season, despite losing JT Toppin, I understand that Akron is going to be a very trendy pick in the first round. I do not see it happening. Grant McCasland is a great coach. He's going to have them dialed. This is not a team that is at risk for Texas Tech to overlook as a lesser opponent because they do play in a good conference. They are one of those kind of elite lower level programs. Playing in the Big 12, Texas Tech had the 10th most difficult strength of schedule in the country. They are not battle tested in the same way as the Red Raiders, and a nice path as well to get to a Sweet 16. So call me crazy, but Texas Tech 6-1 to get to the Sweet 16, with Alabama Hofstra being the other matchup there in Tampa. 6-1 is what you're getting for them to get to the Sweet 16. I kind of vibe it. I kind of like it a little bit.
My sheet says that it is going to be incorrect. They cannot get there because Akron will be taking on Michigan in the Sweet 16. No, I think you're right. I mean, look, what if we're right about Hofstra being a team that can upend Alabama, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a path where you beat a team in which you're heavily favored against in Akron. You beat Hofstra potentially, and Alabama's beatable too, to your point. I mean, either way, that little quadrant that they're in is not terrible. And then all of a sudden you find yourself on the way to the Sweet 16. So I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world at that price at all.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I like a little sprinkle.
You gonna play it?
All right, you find your thing yet?
Yes, I did. I got logged out. Call me
but
crazy.
Yes, I am going to.
Duke got screwed in their draw for the tournament.
Crazy.
Yeah, I don't think this is crazy. So Duke, I mean, if you look at the totality of this bracket, they'll have to go through potentially either one of St. John's or Kansas, which, I mean, come on now. We have the upside of Kansas as a team that can win the national championship. It's insane. You look at the bottom of it, you get the top 2 seed in UConn. We talked about it. You get a Michigan State team that you scrapped and clawed with earlier in the season. I mean, this is a road that could potentially have Duke face Kansas and or St. John's, Michigan State and or UCLA or UConn, like on the way just to get to the Final Four. It's a brutal run for Duke.
I was going to say, throw not only the program names on there, but the head coaches on it.
Yep.
Dan Hurley, Tom Izzo, Bill Self, Rick Pitino, Mick Cronin, Pat Kelsey, all in the same region with John Shire and the Duke Blue Devils. They did them no favors.
And they're injured. That's the other part about it. This isn't even the Duke team that romped through the ACC for the most part. So that is pretty tough. It's also why we have our Final Four. And I just think at some point, can they continue to do this a little shorthanded, especially at a key spot like guard defensively? I would say no. So I do think they might slip up in the Elite Eight. But either way, yeah, they got screwed.
I went 2 in a row. You go 2 in a row.
All right, Michigan, call me crazy if Michigan's going to roll to the Final Four. I don't.
Oh, so you're in disagreement with Macero then? Those ending comments.
I can understand the trepidation with Michigan when they start to take on the big boys. My problem is, who amongst these teams are you really fearful of at this point? I mean, on their end, so you're going to have to take on the 16 seed, whoever it is, Howard and UMBC. Georgia, St. Louis, whoever comes out of that, I think are beatable opponents. Who knows? Maybe Georgia, who I think is going to beat St. Louis. We ought to be able to upend Michigan. We just talked about it. Texas Tech might make it to the Sweet 16, but they're also missing JT Toppin. And then, of course, you get that other crew. I mean, Alabama is a vulnerable team from a defensive standpoint.
But, it's like whoever it's going to be, Alabama, Hofstra, or Texas Tech, or Akron. Are those not beatable teams? 100%.
Yep. And then at the bottom end of the bracket, I don't think I'm going to circle a victory over a potential Iowa State or even a Virginia matchup. But still, I just think their end is pretty manageable to get all the way to the Elite Eight, and then you're winning a single game to get to the Final Four. So I understand the issues with them as a whole, but I think maybe those pop up when you get to a Final Four, what I expect to be against Arizona.
So the Mountain West has only one team in the dance this year. And while I know everybody likes to, pile on in this league, and you look at some of the metrics, it's rightfully so since 2016. If you've been betting Mountain West programs, ATS, you're like minus 36% ROI. It's not good. Even of those, San Diego State took up a really big chunk of that with their run to the national championship in 2023. When you look specifically at the Mountain West team seeded 9th or worse, 9-22 and 2 ATS, 5-35 straight up. The numbers are bad. Give me Utah State. Call me crazy, but the Mountain West will not be one and done in the tournament this year. The Aggies are going to get it done, win and cover against Villanova. The seeds should be flipped in this. They should be the 8 seed. Villanova should be the 9. I
guess, yeah. I mean, Villanova's not really the most intimidating team. And obviously we've talked about the Big East and the way that these teams have struggled. They're over against the powers, right? St. John's, UConn. They lose to Georgetown in the first game of the Big East tournament. They're not a imposing defensive team at all, especially when you talk about the interior. They're very good beyond the perimeter, but outside of that, I don't think it's a group that has the team that would bother Utah State. We talked about this. The matchup with UNLV was bad because UNLV had 2 6'9" dudes who could handle the ball a little bit, score on their own, and really kill them in transition. Villanova, I don't think, is going to be able to do that here against them. So, yeah, I could see your point. They would be able to get this done against Villanova and then just get smoked in the next round.
They're also down. Yeah, I do think that will probably be what happens.
Yes, because they'll run into Arizona if they do win.
Villanova also down Matt Hodge, another season-ending ACL injury. But just looking at some of the big picture stuff with Utah State, 4-4 in quad 1 games. Villanova 2-6. They have a better net rating, 28th in college basketball offensive efficiency, 11th nationally on 2-point shots, nearly 60%. Can hit the 3, but don't rely on it, which I think is important this time of year. So a lot of things just came up green for me when it came to Utah State. What else you got?
All right, next up, let's see. Call me crazy. No seed higher than a 2 is making it to the Final Four.
I think that's what I have. I think I have all 1s and 2s. Yeah. I'm such a lame.
No, but look, we see this all the time. The NCAA tournament is known for the Cinderella runs, things like that. Generally, by the time you get to the end, the cream rises to the top. All the upsets happen on early, and then the better teams start to win. We're also starting to see this in the grand scheme of NIL, where you can just pay for the best talent. The best teams in the country have this gap. Look at this point spreads that we're seeing here for these 1 seeds, for these 4-13 matchups, 5-12s. There is a gap between the teams at the top and the teams at the bottom. You might get an upset or two early on, but I think the best teams are the best teams. And so my total sum is 5 in terms of the seeds that are out there. And my 1-2 seed is Michigan State.
Yeah.
I just don't think that we're going to see this. So, yeah, call me crazy. No seed higher than a 2 is making the Final Four. And again, we'll reiterate, we brought it up with Macero. Total sum of 1 seed's a prop out there, 9.5, shaded to the under at -130. I bet it.
I'm going to tell you on that. I like that. My Final Four that I have, the total would be 6, I guess. I got Duke, Houston, Purdue, Michigan, what I've got so far. But Duke ultimately winning out despite the injury, so we'll see if that plays out. But to your point about how top-heavy this tournament is, first time in NCAA history, 4 different conferences have earned at least 8 bids into the NCAA tournament. The SEC leading the pack with 10. Big 10 has 9, ACC and Big 12 both with 8. And even from a conference tournament standpoint, we saw 17 of the 31 conference tournaments have the top seed knocked out. So what has traditionally been the best team in a lot of those lower level conference tournaments didn't end up getting to represent their conference here this year.
Yep. So we're going to find out. I think this is going to happen, so we will see. But I think it's going to be chalk.
I like that angle a lot. But I mean, that's what we talk about so much in the tournament regardless, right? It's dogs early, chalk late, and that's the way more often than not it plays out.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, we got to step aside here on Money Moves. When we come back, we're going to look more at some of these individual games here for the first round and the first 4 out there in Dayton, Ohio as well. And do you approve this move? Lots of lines, spread, and total on the move. Do we think the market is correct? We'll tell you why or why not coming up after this.